they were at the age where like they don't want to be treated like babies. I think that caused some amount of resentment. And like my default way of interacting with people is just treating everyone as a peer. And like that's one reason why I'm pretty uncomfortable around small children, because it's like, look, if we can't have a conversation, like you can't speak in complete sentences, and I can tell you don't have like the attention span to really pick up on complex thoughts.
And none of their stories are interesting.
Yeah, they're kids are stupid.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I struggle with that. But you know, 10, 11 years old, brains are starting to come online. You can start like actually having a conversation. And so like that's what I did, and it worked. They're going to fire me, and they're like, no, like we need you to keep doing this, but like just try to do it this other way. But like the only thing I process is, okay, I'm not going to get fired.
Yeah.
Therefore, I'm just going to keep doing this. So yeah, overall, I got along great with my kids, and like that part of the job was good. But I was in constant conflict with my supervisors. But again, like they were in a position where they couldn't fire me, so yeah, it was okay.
Yeah, for me, you know, I want to be careful about how I frame this, because I don't want to do a like complainy kind of segment. But I would say that, like, objectively speaking, if you think about what are the characteristics that make a good job and what are the characteristics that make an unfavorable or I need you to have a master's degree and then 2 to 4 years of extra training beyond that, right? And if you're doing human research, in many cases, you are perpetually on call. Mornings, nights, weekends, whatever. Someone didn't come in for their visit Friday, guess what? Your Saturday plans are canceled because you need to get them in because it had to be 48 to 72 hours in the protocol, right? So like, you are perpetually on call. A typical work week between your coursework, your teaching, your grading, your research, your writing, very often in excess of 70 hours. And the pay level, no matter where you're living in the United States, is almost always below $30,000 a year. If you put that stuff if you just put that out on a flyer and said, hey, go ahead and call this number for this job versus them, you're doing all the same grading, you're teaching the same content, and their salary is usually 4 or 5 times higher than yours, for literally the same thing that you're doing. And at that point, most of your research you're doing pretty independently, just like they are. And so, yeah, toward the end of the gig, you start to say, like, I really need to get out of here.
Yeah.
So, I don't, like I said, I don't want to be too complainy, because I have no complaints. I was a grad student for a while, had a lot of opportunities put on a platter right in front of me. I got very lucky in that regard. So I don't want to make it seem like I'm out over here complaining, but objectively speaking, you do get to a point toward the end where you're like, I need to move on to something else immediately.
Nice.
But an underrated job, if you're like, you know, like when I was in high school, I had some crappy high school jobs that I hated. Food service was pretty tough. Dude, janitor at a gym was the best high school and college gig you could ever get. I mean, I was just up there mopping away on the gym floor and just chatting with everybody. Hey, how's your bench press going? Hey, did you get that deadlift the other day? Like, it was the best. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Michael Taylor asks, how about some more conversation around under-the-radar music that you're listening to? I will once again go first, because you're an empiricist. I just went through one of the playlists I've been listening to a lot lately, one that I made myself, and I was like, oh, what are some bands on here that you don't hear about much these days you know, out in the wild as people are discussing music. So just running through some names: Yeasayer, excellent band, saw them at Lollapalooza and they were incredible. Kurt Vile, same deal, saw him at Lollapalooza, he was great. A band called Real Estate. LCD Sound System, which I don't believe they make music anymore, unless I'm mistaken, but back in the day they were pretty solid. Grizzly Bear, Deer Hunter, Pavement, Local Natives, that's one that a lot of folks haven't heard of, but they're pretty solid. Mac DeMarco is getting really big in the like indie music world now, so someone is going to just roast me for including him on an under the radar list. If it makes you feel better, I've never heard of them.
Well,
He's under my radar.
Okay.
He's under at least one radar.
Yeah, but Mac DeMarco, I like his stuff a lot. A few bands that are not under the radar, but they were on the playlist, so I'll throw them in there. The Strokes, I love the Strokes. Interpol had some really solid albums. There's a artist who goes by the name The Teeter, who's quite good. And then one that's just a complete curveball. I can't offer an informed opinion on that, but I will say this. I was in a room hanging out, and my brother was like, hey, do you want to watch a movie? And I said, absolutely not. He said, well, let me rephrase that. I'm going to watch a movie. You can do whatever you want. And he put on 2001: A Space Odyssey, and the opening scene drew me in like the most powerful magnet on the planet. I was blown away. And like
with the monkeys looking at the pillar.
it was, yeah, there's just this entire sequence at the beginning. It starts with that, and then it gets into this very ominous conversation, and you can't tell exactly what they're talking about, but you want to know.
Yeah.
Right? And so it was very nuanced, subtle filmmaking, storytelling that drew you in without hitting you over the head with any really explicit details. But yeah, that movie drew me in and was a wild ride. So that has to be on the list if I were to make one. But instead of movies, I'm going to give my top 5 television series, just based on how I'm feeling lately. Breaking Bad was excellent. It was a classic. Peaky Blinders, I very, very much enjoyed. Seinfeld is a classic. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia is, in my opinion, kind of the modern Seinfeld. There's some pretty clear parallels there. But my favorite universe of content is called On Cinema at the Cinema. And it's Greg Turkington and Tim Heidecker. And it's really difficult to explain. It started out as like a YouTube.
You had 5 movies and you only gave one. I do have a question for you.
Yeah.
If you like 2001, have you checked out any of Kubrick's other stuff?
No, because an irrational thing about me that I will always defend is I refuse to spend 2 hours initiating the process of watching a movie. I refuse to sign up for that commitment, but if you play 4 30-minute television shows, I'll watch all 4 of them, no problem.
That is completely fair. The one thing I will say is that if you like 2001 but don't like many other movies, there might be some other stuff in the Kubrick canon you like, because they all have a very particular feel that's pretty unique to Kubrick stuff.
Yeah.
In that no matter how good the actors are and what they're trying to emote on screen, there's a deep sense you get that everyone involved in the project is miserable.
Yeah.
Because they are.
Yeah.
Because apparently it was hell to work for Kubrick. he would make people just do the same scene 200 times in a row. So I think with Kubrick, you either love him or you hate him.
Yeah.
But if you like one of his movies, you'll probably like more.
So he's trying to get misery out of the actor. He says, well, we don't need to act. I'll just make you miserable.
Exactly.
I'll just create it.
Yeah, no matter what, if you were in a Kubrick film, you were a method actor.
Yeah.
And you were embodying the role of a miserable actor.
Yeah, we'll call it a practical effect. I
Correct.
would just make you extremely miserable.
Yes.
Yeah. Perfect.
But yeah, so my list is, and this isn't necessarily in order, but these are my top 5. Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, Director's Edition. Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, Director's Edition. Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, Director's Edition once again. And then for the final 2, and to be clear, I think that the Lord of the Rings trilogy is maybe one of the greatest masterpieces ever put to film. So my next one, I've mentioned on the podcast before, and this could ages, they're nothing really happened. Things were great in the Roman Empire, and then all technological progress stopped. That's not true. And if anything, one of the most important technological breakthroughs made was crop rotation during the Middle Ages. And that's one of the things that allowed populations to start exploding. Just because before that, people would just plant fields every year, eventually just run them out of nutrients, and then just kind of starve. Teach them about crop rotation and teach them about germ theory of disease. That seems like a pretty big one. And I do know how Pasteur demonstrated that. So I could walk them through it as long as they had like reasonable quality glassware.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that you are largely correct in terms of what you're trying to achieve there, but one thing I'll point out, it says you can bring one item with you. It leaves some room for interpretation there. I believe you could create the item, in my opinion. And so what I would do is take kind of like a scrapbook approach to the materials that I'm putting in my backpack. So I think you hit the nail on the head, because the goal here is to accelerate human civilization, right? So physics textbook, very big, crop rotation, germ theory. What I would try to do is put together a little binder. So yeah, here's like kind of a crash course in what you can expect over the next, 1,000 years or so. So I try to throw in some stuff about how vaccines work, maybe drop a little hint about antibiotics in there. Electric light seems important, but probably one of the single thing that I think
Interested in how Eric would respond to that and just the trolley problem in general. So that's kind of a peek ahead, but let's just start with the basics. So I'm sure most listeners here are aware of the trolley problem, but if not, here the most basic setup is that the trolley's coming down the tracks. There's 5 people tied to the tracks. There's no way you can get there to untie them and save them. Either the trolley is going to run them over, or you can pull a lever, divert the trolley to another set of tracks. There's one person tied up to that set of tracks. You also can't do anything to save them. They're not going to get away. So basically, do you allow the trolley to keep just going straight, not take action, and allow 5 people to die? Or do you pull the lever, divert it to the other tracks, and allow one person to die? But how much do you value bad things happening due to your inaction versus bad things happening due to like an active action that you take? So
yeah.
Eric, do you pull the lever?
So I do, and I have many times, and I think to me it comes back to my old teaching that I was doing. So back in when I was teaching a sports medicine class at the university level, we would have to talk a little bit about legal ramifications of failing to complete your task in the sports medicine field with a satisfactory level of competence, right? So we would talk about lawsuits related to negligence.
I mean, most of the time I pull the lever for most iterations of the trolley problem. All right, so now let's get into the one that Dark Autumn asked about in particular. So now, instead of just the train barreling down the tracks and you can pull a lever to divert it, you can either just let it keep rolling. There's no lever to pull. There's no second set of tracks, but you're standing on a bridge, and there's another person standing on the bridge, and you can push them in front of the trolley, and that will stop it. This is a philosophical question. So like, you can't say, oh, well, it wouldn't actually stop the trolley. Like, you know with perfect knowledge that pushing this person in front of the trolley will stop the trolley. But now you're actually shoving a person instead of pulling a lever. Do you do that one?
I think, again, it's easy to do like a little thought experiment like this and answer a certain way. Until I saw it in an outline.
Really?
Yeah, I've never heard of it.
Oh shit, okay, let's have some fun then.
Okay.
All right, so now, the original version of the trolley problem, 5-1, pull the lever, kill 1, save 5. But the person on the tracks is, say like either like your girlfriend or a parent, best friend, close family member, something like that.
I hate where this is going.
Do you pull the lever then?
Oh, man. You know what? I did look at the link that was talking about how the Buddhist monks answered to this, and I'll probably get kicked out of my Sangha for this, but Man, like you said, loyalty really starts to mess around with your like set of ethical kind of things, you know, like who would be really, it's really hard, right? So like if someone you care about is on that,
I feel good about this, but I don't think, and someone could persuade me otherwise about this, but I don't think that I view acts of commission and acts of omission differently. Like I do think that they carry the same moral heft.
yeah,
And so I don't think you get out of it by not pulling the lever.
right,
And I do think that I do think that just in general, the potential for continued life has to be valued to some extent.
yeah,
And so I would say like just on to go that route, but that's the first iteration of kind of like the classic trolley problems that just make me incredibly uneasy.
It does make me uneasy. I guess you could kind of frame it as like, okay, let's say that we have a total of 100 person years to allocate between the two.
Yeah.
Does it seem more fair that we say, okay, well, you get to live 20 and you get to live 80, or to say, okay, you both get 50 years, you know, you both get a crack at it, right? So I guess with it's the same kind of deal where it's like, well, you know, you've already, the older person has already had ample opportunity to experience all the joys of life and has a more limited, one would assume, you know, remaining years. More robust and resilient, they've got better training for navigating these waters.
All right, so here's the last one.
Okay.
Actually, we'll do two more,
Okay.
and then we'll be done. Okay.
All right.
All right. So this one, still 5-1. It's the classic trolley problem, but the one person, not someone you love, but it's someone who is considered like a great person who did important things. So imagine it's say Albert Einstein, and you know with like perfect philosophical knowledge that he will like discover and that if they didn't do it, someone else probably would have made like an identical discovery and like still done the same stuff within like a decade of when it initially happened. Because like the way like ideas form, very rarely do you have someone who's just like so transcendently brilliant that they're jumping like multiple leaps ahead. It's basically like there are ideas floating around like in the general, but this kind of harkens back to what we were talking about with like for a family member or a close friend. Like I think that if you start making that calculus, you start kind of signing up for a fundamentally elitist society where you are willing to assent that people who have been particularly successful have inherently more valuable lives than other people, and I'm not comfortable with that at all.
Well, no, so what I'm saying is the value of the 10,000 saved.
And no one dies.
Yeah, I would not pull the lever.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say let's see if the numbers work out, you know, and hope for the best.
Yeah.
So I think you gotta give at least open up the chance of a really successful outcome.
Yeah. So I'm with you. So this one I think is the least ethically wrong. Right? This more just gets to like how you think about probability.
Yeah.
Because on net, if you ran this experiment 10,000 times, the same number of people die